Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone around the world that is joining us today. And thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be a part of our webinar here today. In this webinar, we're going to be showcasing how a leading space agency is preparing their satellite imagery for the future of analytics. We're going to be focusing on a concept known as analysis-ready data. So before we get into the actual webinar, we're just going to start off by showcasing how you can engage with our team. So first off, all of your lines are muted by default, and they will be muted through the duration of the presentation. If you have a question at any point during the webinar, please use the GoToWebinar's question panel. So you can expand this panel here in your main control panel, and then you can type your questions directly into the GoToWebinar questions panel here, at which point our panelists will be able to receive those questions, and we will try to engage with you directly through the questions panel. Or if you have a very exciting question, we might decide to save it towards the end and answer it live during the question and answer period. If we can't get to your question during this webinar, we will post all answers to all questions as well as the recording at the end of the webinar. And we'll be providing that link shortly after. So just to begin with, we'd like to introduce you to your panelists for this webinar. So if I can invite my panelists, please, on stage with me. Wonderful. So thank you for joining me. So the first one I'd like to introduce you to is our special guest. So we have Imran Saluji, who is the Chief Sector and Business Developer from the South African National Space Agency. Welcome, Imran. Oh, you might be muted, Imran.
Thank you, Sean, and also welcome to all the participants.
Wonderful, thank you. Next, we have no stranger to these webinars. We have Griffin Williams, one of our solutions engineers, and he, as always, is going to be showcasing our demonstration that we're going to be accompanying this webinar. Welcome, Griffin.
Thank you very much, Sean. Looking forward to it.
Myself as well. And myself, my name is Sean Malamed. I am a product marketing manager with Catalyst. And my main role here today is your host. So I'm going to be driving you through this webinar, through this topic. And most of the time, I'm just going to be handing things off to our wonderful panelists here. So once again, I really appreciate everyone in the audience for joining us and for our panelists for making the time out of their day to be a part of this.
Right. Thanks, Sean.
Okay, so in this webinar, Griffin, do you mind moving it forward for me?
Yeah, sure.
Perfect. So this webinar, we're just going to quickly go over the agenda. So we're going to start off with a very brief overview of what analysis-ready data is. We're going to take a look at, hand things over to Imran, who's going to provide us with SANSA's vision for analysis-ready data in support of decision-making and how they're helping to provide information and make sure that their end users are able to focus on what matters, which is the analytics. We're then going to provide a demonstration. So Griffin will then provide a demonstration of our analysis-ready data capabilities, how we can generate the analysis-ready data, what it does, and then actually using it for real-life analytics, leveraging the Open Data Cube. Then we're going to talk very, very briefly about some scalable options for how you can convert your own imagery or archive data into what's known as Card4L analysis-ready data. And finally, we'll end things off with a questions and answers period. So before we go into it, I just want to quickly highlight our brand. So we launched a new brand called Catalyst, which is a PCI Geomatics brand in October of 2020. And the whole purpose around this was to bring Earth observation, intelligence, and information to more people, to make sure that we can provide it to decision makers, to offer it to end users, and to make it so that it expands beyond the spheres of geospatial and into the mainstream industries in order to help us create a sustainable and more manageable planet. So just to provide an overview of what analysis-ready data is, so many of you have probably heard of this term if you're already embedded in the geospatial market. It's been quite the buzzword over the last year or so, but it's really the idea of converting Earth observation imagery from these beautiful pictures into meaningful information that can be compared with one another and is interoperable. So what's the problem that we're actually trying to solve with analysis-ready data? Well, the idea is that it's extracting meaningful information is often very time-consuming and costly, and it's also very limited to experienced geospatial analysts that know how to pre-process the imagery to a point where then it can be used in various analytical applications, such as time series analysis, object or machine learning, artificial intelligence, because it's a very rigorous process that needs to be performed in order to do or prepare the data so that the information is actually meaningful and can be cross-compared with other imagery captured on different dates from different sensors and from different viewing geometries. So this really consists of three primary steps. So this is the geometric correction of the actual data. So this is making sure that the position of your actual pixels are in the correct places. And we're able to do this with our solution and able to achieve up to 1/10 of a pixel accuracy using a series of proprietary algorithms that we've developed in-house to make sure that your stack of imagery aligns perfectly. And we've actually done a previous webinar to showcase the importance of that to make sure that you eliminate false positives in your change detection around fringes and that your analytics are actually comparing the correct features to one another. We then have a radiometric normalization, and this is the correcting for the atmospheric impacts and bidirectional effects and terrain effects that can influence the radiometry or the radiance values in the pixels themselves. So what we're doing is we're essentially compensating for the atmosphere for the viewing geometries, the terrain impacts or illuminations due to the terrain, and we're trying to compensate for the pixels to produce what's known as a N-bar or a surface reflectance measurement. And now this allows us so that we have a quantitative measurement inside the pixels that are actually meaningful and can be compared with other imagery that has been pre-processed through a radiometric normalization similar to this. And then finally, a very important concept is the product packaging. And this is allowing us to perform certain analytics, reports on the accuracy, on the quality, looking at formatting, so making sure the correct layers are there. And this is really important. And what we've done is we've designed this with cooperation from SANSA to the Card4L specifications so that it allows, so that it meets an international, very rigorous standards for, and allows for the future of interoperability around the data. Now, why should you care about analysis-ready data? What's the importance of it? Well, in data science, there's a common concept known as the 80-20 rule. So this is the idea that 80% of your time is spent on just preparing the data, and 20% of the time is on the analytics. So therefore, the cost is quite high when you're really focusing on bespoke projects or individual projects. And every single time you want to do a new project to extract some information or analytics from the actual data, every single time you have to go through a process of pre-processing. Well, that becomes very costly over the lifespan of a variety of different projects. Now, if all of the data is already pre-processed to a point where it's ready for analysis or only requires minimal additional processing, then we can eliminate that 80% of the time, and really the user can now spend their time on where the value actually lies, and that's in the analysis and the understanding what's going on within the imagery and extracting the insights. The other very valuable concept is the interoperability. So this is making sure that we can compare imageries from different archives, even from different sensors to one another within a time series stack. And this is becoming a very powerful and important component of Earth observation, is now that you have large amounts of data that's been captured from a variety of different sensors for many decades now, is we can actually go back in history and build up, and this is going to be something that Griffin is going to showcase in his demonstration, but build up historical information about features and what's going on and changes and patterns, and we can build that into new models, whether the machine learning, AI, or change detection models, to better understand what's going on and even start to get to the point of creating predictive analytics to start to understand and predict the kinds of impacts different actions will have, or inactions will have for that matter. So one great example of this is, imagine we're looking at a farm and we're trying to understand what the yield is going to be for a particular crop. Well, if we have 30 years of information or data and for the seasonal growth of this crop for this farm and similar farms, we can start to understand, based on its current growth profile, what kind of yield can be anticipated if no changes are made. And this can be incredibly valuable for understanding how to maximize yield and make sure that we don't end up having things like a food shortage. And then the other one is improved analytics. So I'm going to expand on this in the next couple slides here. So analytics is one of those areas where oftentimes the output is only as good as the input. And there's a common saying known as garbage in, garbage out. And this is very true. And this is one of the problems that analysis-ready data is solving, and why it's been developed is to solve this problem. Is that if you provide imagery that hasn't been normalized, that hasn't been properly corrected, that has geometric shifts in it, and you're trying to train it to use AI to train it to automatically detect and extract features, or do very detailed time series analysis, you're going to get inaccurate or unoptimized results because there's lots of noise in the information. So by going and doing this analysis on analysis-ready data and making sure that you have clean data inputs that have all been normalized and are designed to work with one another, you can maximize the quality of your outputs in your analytic layers by removing that noise that is otherwise introduced. And finally, this is a critical process for the development of automated analytical data pipelines. So if we want to get to the point where we can constantly provide data streams, and make sure that we're constantly feeding data into a analytical output, such as providing change detection or understanding what the changes that are occurring on different landforms, different land use, and providing this as a data feed, and being able to solve the problems of the vast amount of information, and being able to make insights and informed decisions based off it, we need to be able to automate as much as possible. And the way we get there, an important component in this pipeline is going to be the analysis-ready data, so that we can feed clean data into these models where they can then perform their work and then ultimately produce a meaningful output to an end user. So with that, I'm going to hand things off to our special guest, Imran, who is going to talk a little bit about South Africa's vision for analysis-ready data in the support of decision-making. So take it away, Imran.
Thank you very much, Sean, and good afternoon, morning, or evening to everyone. Of course, depending on where you are located. And thank you to PCI for including SANSA in this webinar. We've had a very interesting and fruitful and very productive journey over the last year and a bit to get SANSA's ARD data into place, or position to get SANSA's ARD data into place. And hopefully I'll be able to reflect some of this within this sort of journey within this presentation. There may be a number of people who are not too familiar with SANSA, so I'll probably use a few minutes just to give a little bit of background on SANSA itself as a space agency, the South African National Space Agency. SANSA is a government agency established by an Act of Parliament and was established in 2010, but also built on a heritage of space activities within the country that went back quite a number of decades. Its primary purpose is promoting the peaceful use of outer space to support industrial development within the country in the space area, foster research activities in space, and developing the scientific engineering and technological new capabilities, as well as the infrastructure that is required for us to leverage the benefits from space. And last but not least, is very focused on international cooperation as a way for SANSA to contribute to global efforts, but also for SANSA to be able to derive benefit from. So in this way, SANSA has a vision of having an integrated national space capability that doesn't only respond to socioeconomic challenges within South Africa, but has a focus on having to be able to contribute to the African continent as well. And its mission of having to provide leadership in this respect in unlocking the potential of space for the advancement of humanity. SANSA itself consists of 4 operational divisions: a space engineering division that commissions and spacecraft satellites that are developed usually through our industry. We have a burgeoning industry, very good spacecraft industry, satellite industry within the country. We have a space science division that looks at the near-Earth magnetic environment as well as space weather, and has a presence in Antarctica and provides space weather services to the aviation industry. A space operations division that is focused on telemetry and tracking, in orbit testing, launch support, and downloading capability for Earth observation data. This is provided not only for SANSA's own operations, but on a global scale as service to other space agencies as well. And then the Earth observation division within SANSA, where I am located, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Next slide, please. So I've been with SANSA since 2013, but I've also worked as Director of Earth Observations within the Department of Science and Technology in South Africa. It's the reporting ministry for SANSA, and have also worked at the Group on Earth Observations in Geneva. Started my career not in space, but in the mining sector, designing underground excavations for underground gold mining operations. Next slide. In terms of its legislative mandate, the Earth Observation Division in SANSA is responsible for the collection, processing, archiving, and distribution of Earth observation data for government use, and the development of, or the stimulation of the development of value-added products and services to government entities, largely providing space-based information for decision-making processes within government. On the data side, SANSA, to meet this mandate, has a portfolio of sensors that it archives, or some of them like Landsat, Seabird, Spot, and until recently RadarSat-2, with direct reception at SANSA Space Operations. And these data sets are made available to all government users, both at the national level and provincial level, and even at the local government level. And this is irrespective of whether they are commercial data sets or open data sets. For the commercial data sets, we negotiate multi-user licenses that allow government to, or SANSA, to acquire on behalf of government once, and the whole of government is able to use it. The data, in the case of SPOT, which is going to be the focus of the AR, is the current focus of the ARD activities within SANSA. We've been collecting the SPOT data from SPOT 1, and systematically been collecting it over South Africa since 2005 and until around 2017 and 2018. Beyond that, it wasn't a systematic collection, but more sort of user demand type of collection around that. This data has been used extensively within South Africa by a varying number of agencies, such as Statistics South Africa, our Independent Electoral Commission, Department of Agriculture, Water and Sanitation, Environmental Affairs, our Human Settlements Department, as well as local government entities and provincial government entities, and some of our utilities like our electricity utility. Traditionally, this data was provided to the end users on a yearly basis, where we compiled the data taken over the country, at least one cloud-free image of the country, put it together into a mosaic, and provided this to users on an annual basis. An example of the mosaic is shown in the image on the slide. And the provision of this data in this sort through hard disks and being shipped off to end users. Initially, when we started off, was fine for the purpose at that time. But as users started using the data more, their own demands for the data increased, and we started getting requests for more immediate access to the data. And the year-long process for providing the SPOT data was largely due to some of the points that Sean had mentioned around the time it takes to process this data, to package it, and to be able to deliver it to end users. But more immediate access, the demand for more immediate access, and to assist with the sort of long-term storage issues that end users were finding with having to manage large data sets that are delivered on hard disks, pushed us in the direction of having to look at ARD data, converting our SPOT archive to ARD, and to serve this up on a data cube in a cloud platform. It was an effort by us to meet the user demands by leveraging emerging and new technologies that made more efficient and efficient data dissemination, and provided easier access to the data. In our calculations, or in our own thinking around this, that the access to the data is certainly a stimulus to downstream innovation, or around the analytics. And apart from having to make this data available to government departments, we also had sort of made this data available to private entities that were doing work for government. So it's played into the innovation chain as well. Next slide, please. Of course, the big driver of our own sensor portfolio and the move towards ARD data on cloud platform is is having to is driven by the user needs. And just this slide, just to very shortly show the types of priorities that we're trying to address through the program and through SANSA's own efforts around socio-economic as well as environmental priorities that are related to national development plans that we have, as well as our response as a country to sustainable development goal type of initiatives as well. Next slide. Another big driver for us embarking on the ARD and data cube type of approaches has been the necessity for us to be able to ensure that the sort of space infrastructure across the space value chain is fit for purpose for our ambitions as well as the needs of end users. The Space Infrastructure Hub is a 4.5 billion rand program that is looking at having to address the infrastructure components of our space ecosystem, upgrading it, and to be able to ensure that we are able to, into the future, be able to provide the type of information and leverage the benefits of space for development. Next slide. The Space Infrastructure Hub intends to address the entire space value chain by providing the infrastructure basis for that value chain, from the production of satellites and the ground infrastructure, leveraging our own capabilities, to importantly for this discussion around the data grounds infrastructure that would allow us to then provide data to a variety of partners, both within the government sector as well as in the private sector, and thereby leverage those for the provision of information tools. In this case, in the example that is shown in this slide, a program that the government has embarked on, which is called the district delivery model, which seeks to strengthen local government to provide services to citizens. The infrastructure that we're providing through the Space Infrastructure Hub, the cloud platforms, the analysis-ready data, will be able to be used by a number of partners to be able to deliver on the sort of intended outcomes of initiatives like the district development model. Next slide. At the heart of the Space Infrastructure Hub is the user requirements, and we updating our own user requirements processes with new information that will then address the upstream missions, as well as any new upstream missions, as well as the R&D type of activities, what we include in our sensor portfolio, and drive the sort of downstream applications in specific domains. At the heart of this as well is the data access and exploitation services, which would be able to be used by industry and public sector to develop the innovative products and services, information products and services. Our journey with SPOT and ARD, and converting our SPOT archive to ARD, is really the beginning of our journey for us to convert our data holdings to this, to make the data that is available. And I think some very important in data that can be further exploited for meeting some of the requirements of end users. SANSA, next slide, please. SANSA in this process is seen as a central coordinator and enabler of the entire system, with definite boundaries and having to ensure that the rest of the system is also able to develop. Next slide. So SANSA's vision for image analytics is to ensure that our data that we have in our archives from current data that we have in our archives and future data that we may acquire from our own satellites, as well as from other data providers, is able to be accessible through converting this to analysis-ready data to international standards that conform to international standards, and serving this data up in open data cubes to ensure broad access to a user number of different and variety of users. It's really there to lower the barriers to entry for particularly SMEs, and to be able to kickstart that downstream innovation chain that will see a variety of innovative products and services that would come out that could provide critical information for decision-making processes within government itself. Next slide. This slide just giving a sort of indication of the architecture of what we call in Digital Earth South Africa, through which the analysis-ready data would be made available to end users, either the end users being able to bring their own algorithms to the data through functionalities around Jupyter notebooks, or to have application libraries that are constantly updated with the new data that is coming through. This will be done through a hybrid cloud platform that would make use of commercial cloud services, as well as our own cloud infrastructure as well. Next slide. To be more specific around this, our current project around analysis-ready data, and this is where I think the partnership with Catalyst was very valuable, was to look at the conversion of our Spot archive from Spot 1 to 7 of Spot data into analysis-ready data, and to make this available to the end users. To look at some of the analytics that Sean had shown. We've over the years, collected around 1,000 Spot images from 2005, at least 1,000 Spot images per year, around that much per year. So we have quite a substantial archive of the Spot 6 and 7 archive, if I'm not mistaken, is close to 3 terabytes of data as well. And then if we including the Spot 5 and Spot 1 to 4 as well, it gets to quite a substantive data set itself. We at this point in time processing the Spot 6 and 7 data to analysis-ready data, have completed analysis-ready data on one of the 9 provinces that we have around, and now moving over to a second and other provinces. Hopefully by the end of this year should be able to be complete with that, with the Spot archive into analysis-ready data and served up on a data cube. Next slide. So why did we go down this analysis-ready data route? And I think it is best summarized in a quotation that was made given by our managing director for Earth observations, Andiswa Melissa. We were saying that it simply allows users to go directly to where the value of where the value lies, and that is in extracting information from the data. As Sean had pointed out, the pains that remote sensing professionals so enjoy of having to do all the processing is very taken away from the end user, and they are able to readily access the data that we have and to be able to extract the information from that itself. It allows us to, end users to better address societal challenges and for us to be able to make the EO data timely available. And, allows us to leverage our investments in Spot over the years as well, by ensuring that there's new users, the time series analysis that the ARD and the data cubes allows us to more easily conduct. Next slide. We chose to align the production of our ARD data to card4L standards, because I think this is an emerging standard within CEOS. It allows us to then also have the interoperability with other data sources that are being produced to card4L standards. Predominantly, the sort of ARD data that would be provided through platforms such as Digital Earth Africa as well, which SANSA is pretty involved in as well. Thank you. I think that was my last slide, Sean. Thank you.
Yes, it was. Thank you very much, Imran. I will take over now and do our demonstration for today's presentation. So thanks, Imran. Yeah, so today's demo, we're going to be talking about or focusing on two main things. The first is a real-time NDVI anomaly detection, leveraging the Open Data Cube as well as a Jupyter Notebook. And then I'll also walk us through a quick demonstration of how we at Catalyst are automatically generating these analysis-ready data products. So without further ado, I'll get into showing a real-time anomaly detection example. So on screen now, we're looking at an NDVI-based anomaly detection using the Spot stack of imagery from the multiple Spot sensors 2 through 7. And essentially what this analysis is doing is we're first establishing a baseline. So if we look on kind of the left-hand side of the screen where there's the snapshot and these growth profiles, we establish a baseline NDVI value across all of our years of historical imagery. So that's why it's really great to have an archive and a deep stack of data on a specific day or in a specific time of the year. And then we can generate the NDVI for a new layer. So we establish the baseline, we get a new image, we generate the ARD NDVI value, and then we can compare that new value, so in this case it'd be the 2017 value, to the baseline. And we can create a map or a chart such as this one, which shows areas where the NDVI value has increased, so areas in green where the NDVI is higher than the established baseline at that time, and areas in red or orange where it's lower than the established baseline. And so this kind of analysis can be useful for getting an understanding of how you're performing based on previous years, whether or not you might need to put in some additional effort into a particular area of your field or area of interest in order to meet certain yield targets and production estimates. So this type of anomaly detection can be enhanced or also add a little bit more context by generating these growth profiles over time. So throughout our image stack, as we collect new images, we can build this growth profile throughout the year, and we can see the NDVI value changing throughout the year to kind of monitor any differences, which can be used to establish baselines. And then also, when your stack of imagery is deep enough, you could use this kind of information as an input to an artificial intelligence or machine learning algorithm to try and estimate things such as crop yield. Looking at the first 200 Julian days of the year, we can generate a model and then predict what's going to happen in the next 50 days for the peak of the growing season. So that sort of analysis is possible when we have the deep stack of analysis-ready data imagery. But of course, we need to generate that analysis-ready data, those data products first. So as Sean had explained earlier, there are sort of three main pillars of the ARD generation process, those being the geometric correction, which again is critical to making sure that our pixels are aligned well with one another. And then the radiometric normalization, where we correct for all the atmospheric effects to get our surface N-bar reflectance measurement. And then, of course, we need to product package everything together to make sure that the data can be easily accessed, traced, and meet the strict quality standards of the Card4L product specifications. So we've done an example of this is an example accuracy assessment from a subset of the SANSA ARD project that we've been working on. So this is taking 727 satellite images from the SPOT family of satellites, so from SPOT 1 to SPOT 7. In terms of the geometric accuracy, we were able to achieve 0.13 pixels in terms of our circular error probability 90, which essentially just means that any pixel in the image, there's a 90% chance that your positional accuracy will be approximately 1/10 of a pixel, which is extremely high in an accuracy measurement. And then also from a radiometric perspective, we were able to achieve a 0.91 mean R² value for the spectral normalization for this project with 700 images. So to give a little bit more context here, let me show a quick couple of examples. Sorry, just taking a second to load up the map here. So this is our area of interest. We're looking specifically for this at the Western Cape in South Africa. And as you can see, all of these footprints are the images that we've been that we were working with and analyzing. So there's approximately getting close to 1,000 images in total. And these are obviously just the footprints, but we would take the actual images themselves into our Catalyst processing suite. So in this example, we're looking at Catalyst Enterprise. So these are our three analysis-ready data processes, workflows, or jobs. The name is interchangeable, but these names of these processes map up with those ones that we talked about earlier in terms of correcting the geometry, normalizing spectrally, and then performing the data packaging. So a user can automatically generate these products by simply specifying where their input data is, where they want their output data to be. They can go through the end-to-end process in a completely automated fashion to generate those ARD products quickly and efficiently. Once we have the ARD products, then we can perform our analysis. So we can go, for example, into a Jupyter notebook, as we were talking about, sort of been alluded to earlier. This is a common way to kind of visualize these Open Data Cube results in a kind of a pleasing and interactive way. So I'm just going to kind of step through an example here of, there's some kind of setup at the start where we're importing all the different Python packages that we require. Specifically, the one to highlight here is the DataCube package and the DataCube API. So we're able to set up a query to load in some imagery. So for example, I've got some MODIS data that I'm using to supplement the spot scenes in the situation where for those growth profiles where we don't have a spot scene every day, we're filling in the blanks with the MODIS. I set up my query, then I load in the imagery with the data cube loading function, calculate the NDVI. Then I've just made a couple functions here for plotting those growth profiles that I'll show further down on the page here. And then in terms of the anomaly detection analysis, this is looking specifically at spot imagery. So we're bringing in our card Forel harmonized spot data that's in surface reflectance for the spot 2 through 7 sensors. Then we establish a baseline query. So this is where we set up that, kind of that average NDVI that we want to compare against. We set up an analysis query. So this is where we take our new image, specify the new data set that we want to compare to the average historical value. And then I load in both of those data sets, perform some compositing and NDVI generation. And then now we can get into the actual visualization. So this is, again, visualizing a single growth profile for an area of interest. So as you can see, as the Julian day changes throughout the year, we can monitor the differences in NDVI. Again, this is spot imagery supplemented with MODIS data where necessary, which is interesting, but it gets far more useful when you have a lot of data, when you have many, many years. So we can, in this case, we have 2010 all the way through 2017. And as you can, maybe imagine or start to think about from an analytics perspective, we can take these growth profiles, identify trends, use machine learning and artificial intelligence to try and predict what future year growth profiles may look like and how that could relate to things like crop yield, for example. And then lastly, just plotting the result of the anomaly detection. So again, this is taking our new 2017 image, comparing it to the baseline time period that's been established between 2016 and 2010. And again, areas in green are regions where the NDVI value is higher than the baseline, and those areas in orangey red are where the value is less than the baseline. So it's a nice visual. This is a nice visual way to understand and interpret how a particular area of interest is doing compared to historical averages. So that is a quick example, my quick demonstration part done there. So I'm going to kick it back to Sean.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that, Griffin. So we're just going to do some closing statements here and just want everybody in the audience to know where they can access or where our analysis ready data workflow is available. So what Griffin showed today was using Catalyst Enterprise, which is a scalable distributed processing system for repeatable Earth image workflows or Earth imagery workflows, such as analysis ready data. So our analysis ready data workflows are already available, and this is what was delivered to SANSA to support their work. They're using an on-prem model, and basically they have the ability to add and increase production capacity or decrease production capacity based on supporting additional servers within their infrastructure. This is also available now through our Catalyst microservices, where essentially this is designed for optimized cloud processing, where you can get a significant increase in scalability if the data imagery is already that you're looking to process already lives in a public cloud. So this right now is available on the Amazon AWS cloud, where essentially come speak with us and we can help onboard you with this solution. And this is the idea, once again, where it can be scaled to significant levels where current on-prem systems just are often resource strapped in those capacities. Furthermore, there's also efficiencies in the terms of the fact that the imagery is already in the cloud, so the processing moves to where the imagery or the data already lies, so we don't have to worry about that time-consuming and expensive process of transferring the data. And also, it's based on an on-demand pricing model. So one of the benefits there. So with that, also, if you want to learn more about our analysis ready data workflow and just about it in general, you can go and visit our website, catalyst.earth/technology/ARD. And you can also, we also have our case study available with Imran and his team at SANSA to showcase a little bit more detail about what they have done. So with that, we're going to open things up to a question and answers panel. So if I can invite our members back on. So our panelists, such as Imran and Griffin, if you can come back onto the stage with me, and we can address any questions that might come up. So if you have asked any questions at this point, or if you wish to ask any questions, feel free to ask your questions into the questions panel. Okay, so we actually have a couple questions that have come in already. So the first one, I think Imran, this one is ideal for you to answer. So the question was, is your mission for Africa and to create analysis-ready data Africa, will it one day include more areas outside of South Africa, such as Middle East?
I'm not so sure that the Middle East and outside areas outside Africa are within our immediate plans. Certainly within areas within Africa, particularly with data sources such as seabirds that we may look at in the future, and particularly contributing to the analysis-ready data that is within Digital Earth Africa as well, the Landsat as well. So those would be our sort of immediate priority areas.
Wonderful. And this is actually another great question for you, Imran, as well. So it's a two-part question. The first one is, when will SANSA's spot ARD imagery be available to access, say via the data cube? And also, is there a charge if the public, and can the public access the data? And is there a charge for them to access it?
We're hoping to get all our spot data into ARD format and into the data cube by the end of this year, available. The license conditions that we have with the spot, our license don't allow us to make that publicly available. Only allows us to make that available to government entities within South Africa and private sector entities that are doing work for government themselves, but not a broad access at this point in time.
Okay. And is, I guess this is one last question, I think, for Imran. And so is SANSA working with, in partnership with the Digital Earth Africa initiative?
Most definitely. We're very much involved with Digital Earth Africa. And this one, Melissa, our managing director, is a co-chair of the technical advisory committee of Digital Earth Africa, and we are a partner in the Digital Earth Africa enterprise itself. So very much part of the Digital Earth Africa.
Wonderful. And then I think this is unfortunately the last question we're going to be able to take, because we're already quite a few minutes over time. But this one I believe would be addressed at us, which is what sensors are supported for Catalyst analysis ready data workflow. So I can address this one. As of right now, we have full off-the-shelf support for the spot data set where the sensor has already been calibrated directly for it. But we support Word data and sensor agnostic, so we can support really any sensor. We just might need to work with you a little bit on making sure that we perform some of the calibrations and tweaks that might be more sensor specific to make sure that that sensor is properly supported within our ARD workflow. So with that, if we didn't get to answer your question, there's a few more questions that came in that we were unable to get to, but once again, all of your questions will be answered on our website, and we'll send out a recording of the webinar along with a link to the to where you can access the answers to these questions on our website in the next few days. But I'd like to just once again thank everybody for joining us and taking this time out of your busy schedules. but also I'd like to make a special thank you to you, Imran, for being and participating in this webinar and telling your story about the future of and how ARD is going to play into the future at SANSA. So thank you so much, Imran.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. And Griffin, it's always a pleasure and always happy to have you drive our demos.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, once again, thank you again for joining us, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.